Let's be brutally honest, brother. Most men are functionally illiterate when it comes to female communication. She says one thing with her mouth, but her eyes, her tone, her timing, her body language, they're all broadcasting something completely different. And if you don't understand this multi-layered language, this constant gap between verbal content and actual meaning, you'll spend years wandering in confusion, thinking relationships are complicated when they're actually remarkably predictable once you crack the code. This breakdown isn't about attacking women or fostering bitterness. This is about equipping you with pattern recognition, because when you finally understand what these common phrases truly mean, what they're actually communicating beneath the diplomatic surface, you stop chasing confusion and start leading with clarity. You stop being reactive and start being strategic. You stop getting manipulated and start seeing reality. I'm not ready for a relationship right now. It sounds polite, almost considerate, like she's being honest about her emotional state and protecting both of you from getting hurt. But here's the foundational truth most men refuse to accept. She's not saying she's incapable of relationships in general. She's not saying she needs time to heal or work on herself. She's saying with absolute clarity that she's not ready for a relationship with you specifically. This is her diplomatic, socially acceptable way of communicating, "You're not the man I truly desire, but I genuinely enjoy the comfort, attention, validation, and emotional support you provide me." Most men catastrophically misread this as hope, as potential. They convince themselves that time will change her mind, that if they just remain patient, keep being available, keep proving their worth, eventually she'll recognize what she has and commit. But what she's actually doing is placing you in her emotional storage room. You're the backup plan, the safety net, the reliable guy who's nice to have orbiting when the men she actually desires aren't texting her back or giving her the attention she craves. Why does she phrase rejection this way instead of being direct? Because women are socially conditioned from childhood to avoid being perceived as the villain. She doesn't want to hurt your feelings directly. She doesn't want the social consequences of being labelled cold or cruel, so she wraps rejection in softness, in ambiguity, in future possibility that will never materialise. But emotional softness doesn't change underlying reality. It only delays your clarity and keeps you trapped in limbo. Here's what you need to understand about female psychology. When a woman genuinely feels something powerful for you, when real attraction and desire are present, she doesn't want to risk losing you. She'll actively find ways to be ready regardless of her circumstances. She'll rearrange her schedule. She'll cancel other plans. She'll make space in her life. She'll lean in emotionally, but when she says not now, what she's actually communicating is not you, not ever you. So don't sit around waiting for potential that doesn't exist, for reciprocation that will never arrive. Your time is your most valuable resource. When she clearly tells you she's not ready, believe her and walk away immediately. I don't usually do this, but I'm doing it because of you. This particular line is one of the oldest manipulative phrases in human courtship. When she deploys this statement, she's deliberately creating an illusion. She wants you to believe you're uniquely special, that she's breaking her normal rules and boundaries specifically because you're worth it. But let's decode what's actually happening beneath the surface. Why do women consistently use this phrase? Because social image is power, especially for women navigating sexual dynamics. She wants to appear innocent, virtuous, selective in your eyes, even if she's far from inexperienced in this exact situation. So she wraps her current action in a protective disclaimer. I don't usually do. This creates several psychological effects simultaneously. It makes you feel specially chosen. It preemptively softens any potential judgment you might have. It adds emotional intensity and significance to whatever's happening. You start thinking you've unlocked some hidden, authentic side of her, when in reality it's a performance she's executed multiple times before with other men. Understand this clearly. She's not necessarily lying maliciously or with intent to harm. She's protecting her reputation and managing your perception of her. She knows instinctively that men judge women based on sexual history and perceived selectivity. So she constructs a narrative that preserves her image as virtuous and discriminating while still doing exactly what she wants to do. It's not fundamentally about morality. It's about controlling perception and managing the frame. But here's where most men fail catastrophically. They confuse emotional theatre with genuine emotional connection. They start genuinely believing, I must be the special one who changed her, who brought out this side of her that no one else has seen. No, brother. You didn't transform her or unlock anything new. You simply entered a familiar scene that she's performed before, just this time with you cast as the lead actor instead of someone else. So when she says, I don't usually do this, but then proceeds to do exactly that, understand her usual pattern includes saying this exact phrase. Don't judge her harshly for it. But absolutely don't be blinded by it either. Don't let it inflate your ego into thinking you're special when you're simply next. Because a woman who genuinely doesn't usually engage in certain behaviour won't be engaging in it. Period. Her actions will actually align with her stated values, rather than contradicting them while she offers verbal disclaimers. I don't like money. You've probably encountered this statement, delivered softly, almost spiritually, with an air of humble authenticity. I just want a simple life. Material things don't matter to me. I don't care about wealth. And countless men hear those words and think with relief, finally, a woman who loves me for who I am, not what I can provide. But that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what she's actually communicating. When a woman says she doesn't like money or care about material wealth, what she's truly expressing is, I don't want a man who worships money more than me, or neglects me for his career, but I absolutely still want to feel secure and protected with him. Because regardless of how spiritual, grounded, or anti-materialistic she presents herself as being, deep in her psychology she craves stability. And in practical reality, stability speaks primarily in the language of financial security. Money itself isn't about greed or materialism. Money represents direction, discipline, competence, and protection. A woman feels fundamentally safe when a man demonstrates he can effectively handle his life, manage his finances, execute his plans, and fulfill his mission. So when she says, I don't like money, don't interpret that as permission to be financially irresponsible or directionless. Understand that she still deeply values masculine drive, ambition, and the capacity to build something meaningful. Women can absolutely stay with you during broke periods, but not if you're acting like remaining broke forever is acceptable. Not if you lack vision, drive, or a clear plan for improvement. Because she's not solely attracted to what you currently have in material terms. She's attracted to what you're actively becoming, to your trajectory, to the evidence that you're building towards something, rather than stagnating or complaining. Here's the deeper truth. Women don't love money itself. They love the man who knows how to attract resources, because that man radiates leadership, control, vision, and competence. Those are the actual attraction triggers. So don't misinterpret her gentle words about not caring about wealth. What she actually means is show me you can handle pressure, build something stable and meaningful, and still make me feel emotionally safe and prioritized while doing it. That's the complete picture she's not articulating directly. I want a nice guy. This particular phrase confuses and misdirects more men than virtually any other statement in modern dating, because every woman claims she wants a nice guy. Yet those same women consistently end up falling for men who challenge them rather than men who chase them desperately. Here's the truth that solves this apparent contradiction. When she uses the word nice, she's not describing the kind of man who bends to every demand, who supplicates constantly, who has no backbone. She means she wants a man who's fundamentally kind but completely grounded in his own frame. A man who can demonstrate empathy and emotional intelligence without losing his masculine authority or leadership. Nice in her vocabulary means something radically different from how most men interpret it. Men here be gentle, be soft, never disagree, always accommodate, put her feelings first, always. Women actually mean be respectful and considerate, but never weak or pushover-like. They respect men who can hold compassionate space for their emotions, while simultaneously holding firm ground when tested or challenged. Because testing is fundamental to female instinct. It's not malicious. It's how she feels and confirms your strength, your frame, your masculine solidity. And when you fail those tests repeatedly, when you over-explain every decision, over-apologize for minor things or desperately overchase her approval, she loses attraction rapidly. Not because you're a bad person, but because she can't feel your backbone. She can't sense the masculine structure she's biologically wired to seek. Here's the paradox that destroys most men. She doesn't want a man who treats her like royalty before she's earned that treatment through her own investment and respect. She wants a man who treats himself like someone of high value and invites her into that frame. So when she says, "I want a nice guy," what she's actually communicating is, "I want a man who is genuinely kind to me, but strong and grounded enough to protect me, lead me, and even protect me from my own worst impulses when necessary." Nice doesn't mean soft or weak. It means solid, disciplined, self-controlled, warm, but absolutely without submission or loss of frame. The man who genuinely understands and embodies this balance doesn't chase women desperately. He attracts them naturally and effortlessly because he's offering what they actually want rather than what they claim to want. My ex means nothing to me. When you hear this declaration, don't immediately get defensive or paranoid, but absolutely don't be naive either. Understand this fundamental truth about human psychology. Emotions don't simply disappear or evaporate. They hide behind denial and rationalization. When she insists he means nothing to me, she might be trying to convince herself more than she's convincing you. Because sometimes her ego is still wounded from how things ended. Sometimes she still checks his social media profiles periodically. Not necessarily because she wants him back, but because she wants confirmation that he still thinks about her, that she still matters to him. That pattern isn't closure, that's unfinished emotional business, and here's what most men ignore or refuse to see. You fundamentally cannot compete with someone's unresolved emotions. You can't love her intensely enough or treat her well enough to make her completely forget him. That's not your responsibility, or within your power. So instead of trying desperately to prove you're superior to her ex, instead of getting into comparison competitions, simply observe her behavioral patterns. Does she bring his name up during arguments? Does she subtly compare your behaviors or choices to his? Does she seem to have emotional reactions that don't match the current situation, but make sense if she's still processing past relationship dynamics? If these patterns exist, she hasn't fully healed, and if you rush into trying to fix her emotional wounds, you'll become part of her recovery process, rather than her genuine future. Remember this clearly. Love and attention given to an emotionally wounded person often transforms into therapy. And when she finally heals and processes everything, she might not choose to stay with her therapist. So when she insists my ex means nothing to me, don't argue about it or accuse her of lying. Just watch carefully. Her patterns, her reactions, her triggers will tell you the complete truth. Her words cannot and will not. I just want a man who loves me for who I am. It sounds beautiful and profound, almost spiritual in its simplicity. But this phrase is often the most disguised, subtle form of emotional manipulation, especially dangerous for men with empathetic, accommodating personalities. When a woman says, "Love me for who I am," sometimes what she actually means is accept me unconditionally, even if I refuse to grow, change, or take accountability for my behavior. And that's precisely where good men get trapped. They confuse unconditional love with unconditional tolerance of dysfunction. True love doesn't mean passively allowing disrespect, laziness, stagnation, or refusal to grow. It means standing beside someone who's also committed to moving forward, to becoming better, to evolving. But when a woman deploys this line repeatedly as a defense mechanism, she's communicating that she wants emotional comfort and validation without any accountability or expectation of growth. You'll recognize this pattern when she consistently avoids difficult but necessary conversations, when she plays victim immediately after you express reasonable boundaries or expectations. She'll twist the situation emotionally, making you feel guilty for wanting more, for expecting her to meet you halfway, for having any standards at all. A genuinely mature woman will never demand that you love her exactly as she is forever without change. She'll say something much healthier like, "Love me as I grow and evolve, and I'll do the same for you." That's authentic partnership. That's mutual investment. But a manipulative or emotionally immature woman says, "Love me exactly as I am, and never question me, never expect more, never hold me accountable," that's not romance. That's dependency and control disguised as vulnerability. So when she says she wants a man who loves her for who she is, listen to the context and observe her behavioral patterns. If her actions consistently demonstrate growth, self-awareness, and reciprocal effort, she genuinely means it in a healthy way. If her actions primarily demonstrate excuses, avoidance of accountability, and resistance to any growth or change, she's weaponizing the phrase, "Here's the bottom line that every man needs to internalize. Women aren't your enemy. Female nature isn't something to fear or resent." But women's words can be profoundly misleading if you don't simultaneously pay attention to their actions and patterns. A wise man doesn't endlessly argue about what she said. He doesn't obsessively decode every text message. He doesn't chase clarification constantly. He observes behavioral patterns over time, because genuine attraction is never primarily spoken. It's demonstrated through consistent action. She might say one thing verbally to maintain social acceptability or manage her image, but her behavior, her choices, her investments of time and energy, those will always reveal the underlying truth. If you found value in this breakdown, you now have a significant advantage over men who take everything at face value. Use this knowledge to protect yourself, to see clearly, to make better decisions, because silence, standards, and self-control will protect you far more effectively than any verbal declarations of love ever will.